on my first step ever, my friends, my ninjas. With every episode, we talk about aspects that can help each one of us go a little further and a little more closer to our goals in our life. This time, we are going to talk about something very, very relevant and I think very important for a lot of international students and also migrants. As international students, we dream of big things. So when we go to a different country, we want to settle abroad with our own personal reasons for career growth, or it could be anything else. So today I have someone with us who has gone through the same journey and he has had his own ups and downs. Story is quite similar to each one of us, but what he did with his circumstances is what makes him stand out. And that's why please join me in welcoming Ash Latif all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Hi Ash, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me, Shani.
It is a pleasure, and I am quite happy that we sort of met. I think we met through Instagram,
Yes.
and we had a very quick chat a few weeks ago, and
Yeah.
I came to know that what you are doing for international students and migrants in Australia, and the story and the motivation behind is really really noble. So I think it's a great platform, and it is a great story that I'm going to share today with everyone else, and they
Yeah.
must hear this because they can learn a lot from your journey, and I think a lot of them are on the same path wherever they are in this world, not just in Australia, because I think the strategy, the ideas that you had, and what you made out of your situation can help them as well, whoever is listening to us. So, let me give you a brief about who Ash Latif is and what his story is. So, Ash Latif, he is a migrant from Maldives, and after realizing he had no chance at work or passing English scores needed for Australian permanent residency. So I think you decided that you want to change your entire approach that can help you get the residency that you're looking for. But I think more than that, you had a goal in your mind and you wanted to crack it. And when that was not happening, you saw what is going around in your environment, and how you made things happen is the key. So once
Yeah.
you went through a lot of scientific papers, research of job seeking journey, what works, what doesn't work. And I think after facing a lot of no's, which a lot of us do face, a lot of international students, I think that goes without saying, you you develop strategies that you later utilize to successfully boost your career and gain Australian citizenship. Now, I want my listeners to you know get into this episode with this perspective of not that we are not promoting how, or it's not a shortcut formula of getting a residency. It's more about how Ash turned around things for him, how he managed to get to his goal, and the strategies that he picked up, which he is so happily willing to share through his organization that he just started, which is Prometheus. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. The beauty lies where when you had your own share of problems, but now that you have made it, you want to share it. And that's why you started your coach of friends and family using the strategies, and before moving into online coaching for
Yeah.
migrants and international students. That means that you help students with online coaching as well. And I
Yeah.
believe you developed the accelerator program alongside consulting with experts within the field, which is
Yeah.
great. I think you consulted successful migrants and business owners and tailored to the Australian environment, which I think is going to be of a great value, which we'll be discussing soon.
Yeah.
I think your single most aim was to help international students and migrants, go past those disadvantages that I think you had come across,
Yeah.
which is really, really, I'm really happy to hear that because I am an graduate in Australia. So, how was your journey as an international student? Were you here for your bachelor's or for your master's? What was the time period like?
I moved to Australia in 2011, and I actually moved here to study my bachelor's degree. I had never been to Australia before. It was my first time. It hit me like a truck, the cultural differences. People spoke differently. Once you're hit with that different accent, suddenly, you gotta sit at the very front of the class or the lecture room to really try and absorb all the information, especially your first year. When I was an international student, I started off with advertising and then switched to commerce. During that period, I felt like I didn't really do much in terms of, job hunting or networking because, I was studying and I was stuck with this really, what I would almost call a primitive idea of, hey, you know what? I'm going to start after, or, close to graduation, or maybe after I graduate. That's when I'm going to start. And it's going to be easy because what you hear generally are from other students, but you also have to consider many other students also haven't really gone into their careers. So the information they have is also essentially Chinese whispers, what other people have told them. So I thought, hey, you know what? I've majored in accounting, get my permanent residency. I'll easily get an internship. I'll easily convert that into a part-time or a full-time role. And then, you know what? Easily get my permanent residency. But none of that was true. It really hit me towards the end of my third year. Wait a minute, this journey has just begun, and it's a very difficult one. I always like to tell my students and people who are trying to play a game of chess with your opponent, and your opponent knows all the rules, but you don't. So imagine you're trying to defeat your opponent. It's going to be very hard, or you're going to lose every single time. And I found the hard way that this is exactly what was happening. It was rejection after rejection. When I made the decision to stay here, I had to support myself. And to support myself, I needed some sort of income. And at a certain point, I wasn't getting any callbacks. I had a bachelor's degree, and I was getting rejected from, hospitality jobs at Hungry Jack's and that. Because at a certain point, you're in
Yeah.
this very tricky position where you're either overqualified or you're underqualified. And in these cases, everyone has that question: why exactly are you applying here? But you need to survive. At a certain point, I had like $150 in my bank account, and rent was due in a few weeks. And I thought, hey, this is probably the lowest point in my life. I've spent 4 years here doing a degree. Is that just going to go to waste? Because, and back in the day, they didn't have the Uber or all that a lot of international students actually do these days. So I was at a very low point, and that was what drove me. That desperation drove me to sort of switch my entire life around and dedicate it to. So that essentially was the journey.
I would actually like to pause over here and maybe go back a little in your journey, what you were mentioning, and highlight few things, because it's really interesting that when you thought that I'll start my job search journey just after I graduate, and all the time the planning wasn't there, or maybe you had a certain mindset, that,
Yeah.
as mentioned, it will be easy.
Yeah.
So that is what point, I want to tell our all listeners who are over here listening to this. If you plan on moving to a different country and you want to pursue a particular career or profession, I think the first thing is that you do your homework, your research properly.
Yeah.
As exactly Ash mentioned, a little bit planning is very, very essential.
Yeah.
But after coming, I think after you graduated, as you were mentioning, post your studies, you had applied to a lot of jobs, and most of us are in the same situation. We do have to do some sort of jobs, to have that kind of cash in hand to pay our bills.
Yeah.
But more than that, that's not what anyone has come here for. I mean, that's good to support yourself. It's very good. It's a very good push that you give your self-respect, self-esteem in a way, because you are starting to earn for yourself, which is good.
Yeah.
But when you want to pursue a career or field, you have invested so much, you want to go ahead in that field.
Yeah.
So what were the top 5 mistakes that you think that you did in your job search journey post your study?
I think number one would really be what you said. Essentially, 3 years is what you get as a student, and then you get your 1.5 or 2 years as a grad. So overall, let's just say you have 5 years. If you don't plan for it, what happens is, say you wait until your third year like me, or maybe until you graduate. So you haven't done any of your networking, you haven't done any of that. Suddenly, instead of 5 years, you're down to 1.5 years. So every year you wait to excel in your career, or maybe even, get unpaid experience, whatever it may be, you're facing a very fast clock that's running out, and a wasted time. Thing I would definitely say is, and people mention this word like it's almost a buzzword, which is networking. I completely get it, because we're all from different places. You're 18 years old, 18 or 19. You're not expected to go out and network. Like, that's just something that culturally doesn't happen. So you're still, a lot of people are stuck in that mindset when they come here. So you don't really think about doing that. I'm one of them. We were too scared to speak to, you know, people who own businesses, or locals. I would call myself an introvert. I would definitely find like myself thinking, hey, how do I network? But I don't really feel like it, because I don't really even know where to start. But there
Yeah.
are many places you can start, and the number one place would be your university. The clubs that many universities run for your particular industry, they do a lot of visits to big companies where you can learn a lot more. You can grab business cards and that sort of thing. So that would be number two. And number three, I would definitely think is somewhat related to number two, which is fail to understand Australian culture very well. And I think that is something I show a lot of my students, and that is how to navigate and sort of indulge yourself in the culture, because that really helps you when it comes to networking, when it comes to improving your English. And the only way you can do that is by expanding your social circles and even your professional networks to include locals. All my friends just so happen to be Australian. But if I looked around me, students from bigger countries, like whether it may be China or India or Malaysia or Singapore, they tend to hang out with other Chinese students or other Indian students, and they miss out on understanding social cultural nuances that you can only understand by speaking and essentially hanging out with Australians as much as possible. Many Australians, because they grew up here, they already have a network, and this happened to me as well. Like a lot of friends that I had, their cousin might own a business, an accounting firm, for example. Someone's dad might be the head of marketing somewhere. Luckily for me, it was just by chance that I managed to sort of fix it, because there weren't other Maldivians around me. So I had to sort of make friends like that. And the next one, I think everyone should try their best to speak English as often as possible. If you speak English, and if you speak it more often with locals as well, and it doesn't matter, it could be the students in your lectures, your professors, whoever it might be. If you do that more often, by association, you improve your English, because you're forced to sort of learn it. You sort of pick up how people pronounce words a lot better, and you become good, like, because you're always speaking to locals who speak in English. Where again, this happened to me almost accidentally, because all my friends were local. I was always speaking in English with them. People always ask me that, how did you develop a somewhat Aussie accent? And that is
Yeah.
exactly how it happened. Found that really helped when it comes to the IELTS and PT exams. You're not dedicating your English upskilling essentially to just a few weeks before the English exams. You're doing it every day. And the next big one, and I think this is a culmination of everything I've said, it's a tough journey. And I think everyone should really understand there are lots of things to learn, and it will take time. How I got through that was I did things, small things, every single day, all leading towards that goal. So little habits that you form, whether it be picking up better English skills, learning how to talk to people at an event, whether, a lot of people are afraid to go up to a circle of people and just strike up a conversation. I mean, it's natural. It's human. Develop small habits that will eventually lead to that goal. Definitely will be the top 5.
Ash, that is incredible, because I think the top 5 mistakes that you say, I think we can look at as the 5 parameters that you are giving today to all the listeners. Which is amazing. Plan, networking, and culture, getting, really into the culture, English speaking, and participating in practice. I think these
Yeah.
are the five parameters that I think I can take away from your story. So definitely these will take you way ahead in your journey. Networking being a very, very, very important one, which as Ash mentioned, and I think it's so lovely that you explained everything in so much detail, what went wrong for you and how you made it work for you, because that also helps our listeners understand that, okay, this is the issue, but like what happened to this person and how did he
Yeah.
recover from there? What did he do with
Yeah.
that? So thank you for taking our listeners in depth and making us understand that what are the areas where we can work on. And it's just about working hard. And you very rightly said it's not an easy journey, but life is all about learning. And that is
Yeah.
the challenges that you have. If you have your goal set, then you just need to find various ways, and also to identify the way that will go to your journey in the most efficient, in the right way, and in the fastest manner. I think that's the whole point of your for anything that you set your mind to. So Ash, just moving forward, like I really wanted to understand then what was that, the code that you cracked, how the table turned around for you, and what was the strategy that you kind of finally came to know and things worked out for you.
My first job that, when it comes to my actual industry, I actually networked. It was a paid internship. I was in Canberra at the time. And if you don't know, Canberra is mainly, federal jobs. And they all need security clearance that not even permanent residents can get. Only citizens can work for these jobs. I wasn't even a permanent resident. I went to a job fair and I was speaking to a few, and I was speaking to this representative from a firm, and we just, really hit it off. And I just spoke to her like, like an everyday friend. I got a lot out of it, and then we exchanged, professional contacts, and I just sent her an email a few weeks later saying, "Hey, what opportunities, are at your firm? I really like it. I heard from you guys back at the networking event, and they told me have an internship program. Why don't you apply?" I actually went on the website, and they said on the website that this position is only for permanent residents if you
Yeah.
aren't. I was immediately like, oh crap. So I got in touch with this rep again. And then she goes, you know what? Just apply anyway. And if you impress very well in the interview, you can get in. And at this point, we had someone become friends. And that's essentially why I tell people to improve their conversational skills, because then you can really impress people and make it more casual rather than keeping it that professional where there's that barrier where people don't do favors for you. So in this case, that was the complete opposite. So she actually put in a recommendation for me as well. And the best part was right before my interview, I said, "Do you know who's going to be interviewing me?" And she said, "Yes, this is what they're like, the directors, and yeah, just do this and that." So through that networking process, I had already gotten through that huge barrier of permanent residency only. I had a very smooth ride into my first internship. And to my benefit, it was a very specialist type of accounting firm. And it really, really helped me gain knowledge most people don't really have because it was that specialized. But the problem was after the internship ended, once again, I was back to starting position. At this point, I was applying to so many places. I was trying to, I've had my first experience, so I'm on top of the world. But it doesn't work
Yeah.
like that because, and this is something that I tell everyone, even though you might have had experience, and which is very important, you still have to understand that, out of a pool of 10, 20 people that they would highlight to potentially hire their company, it's likely that almost all of them have experience already. This is sort of where the ideas for Prometheus started forming in my head. And I was spending hours every day, instead of applying for jobs, I was reading the real science behind it. I was on websites. I hit up every single successful migrant I could find. If someone was in the news, for example, talking about, hey, I was a former international student, and I got a job. I looked them up and I actually emailed them and I tried to find out, hey, what exactly did you do? Because if you ask people who have made the right, who've taken the right steps, for example, the successful ones, they'll guide you on the correct path. And this is, unknowingly what I was doing because I was so driven at that time because, like I said, I didn't have anyone to support me. So I needed cash income to actually survive. And at this point, I learned a lot about discrimination, for example. Important thing that a lot of people I feel like don't fully get. You can call someone up and just judging by your accent or your name, they can disqualify you. So you have to be very, very smart about how you approach employers. A lot of people think, like, because I've spoken to a lot of recruiters, they all think, hey, this person's English might not be very good. So imagine we're trying to, put them up to talk to a client and they might screw that up. So you don't want to take the risk if we have 20 Australian locals who speak perfect English. So that's the problem they're facing. So I had to navigate all of that. And a funny story I tell everyone is I even changed my name on my resume. I actually, my full name, it's quite long and most people can't pronounce it. Everyone calls me Ash. But my last name, I figured, hey, might be a barrier. I'm experimenting and testing out new methods all the time. I still send out resumes despite not looking for a job just to see if I get callbacks. And what I did was I went on a random name generator. And I put in names starting with an L because my last name starts with an L. And it spit out a lot of names like Lancaster. And I was like, oh, that's a cool name. But it reminds me of Game of Thrones characters. So I'm not going to use that. And it spit out Langley. And it reminded me of Langley Center in the US. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to use Ash Langley on my resume and send it out. And everyone always laughs when I tell this story. But the night I sent it out, the next morning I got 2 calls. It was like magic almost. I was like, wait a minute. And before that, the main reason I did this was there's a study that was done by the Australian National University that actually talks about this, about how people with, non-Australian names, and depending on where you're from, like, for example, people with Chinese names, they might have to try, I think it was like 60% harder, or they have to send 60% more resumes before they can get a call back. These are high numbers, and and a lot of us don't have the time and resources to do that. So that was a big one for me that I realized that I can do. And you know what? Like, from that point onwards, I had found out so many things about resumes, highlighting my strengths and that sort of thing. And eventually, when I landed my grad job, the funniest thing is I didn't even apply through, Seek or Indeed, which is what pretty much everyone does. I emailed a human resources manager directly and I said, hey, I didn't even send out a resume at first. I saw something that they advertised and I reached out directly and I said, hey, I have a very specialized skill, from my first internship that I think could be very useful for your company. She immediately called me in for an interview. I bypassed all that, applying through Seek and doing all this, all these steps. I bypassed all of that and got right in. Never be scared to do that either, to reach out to people directly, because it's not a problem whatsoever. So after all of that, and I had gone through a lot of this, and I had at that point taught a lot of students who were my friends and family, and they had the exact same results as me. That's when I decided, hey, maybe I can do something about this. And at that point, I was just responding to ads in Gumtree where people were like, oh, can someone help me with my English skills and that sort of thing? Or people would refer their friends and family to me. And I was just showing people. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, maybe I should put all of these strategies, everything together and start something up. And 2020 was the year that I was hoping to start it. So I started it much later than that officially. And at that point, I already had many students. Yeah, we started Prometheus, and I named it after, I wanted to, and I always say this, I wanted to make my goal to level the playing field so that if I'm competing for a job against an Australian, we're playing on the same playing field. They're not going to question my name, my background, anything like that. They're going to question, hey, can you do this job just as well as everyone else? And that is exactly where I want my students and everyone who listens to me to be at.
I feel so good that over here we are able to have a person like you who can be so candid and tell us exactly what happened in the journey from start to finish. So thank you, Ash, for coming on my first step ever and taking us through all your journey, your ups and downs. And I really wanted to, ask about what was your motivation behind starting your own organization, which I think you have taken us through in so much detail. And we can also see those things, those very small things which can make a difference. I think it's a completely different matter if someone wants to debate whether it's right or wrong. But I think, as you mentioned, there are studies, there are paper backing things, and when you did it, you saw the results. So I think to each or to his own. Whoever is listening to us, I am very sure that you have gained immensely from Ash's journey, because there's lots that he tried. And I think one thing what I really, really admire about you, is Ash, is that when it came to point zero, you did bounce back, and you gained the courage, because I think a while back you mentioned that you think that you are an introvert, but then you had sent an email to the HR directly. You networked with that rep, and you always had that confidence going on building, because you had a goal. And I am so sure that your students who have already been in this program, they definitely have been benefited, and the ones that who will be willing to join will definitely know that where you are coming from, and they know that you have gone through the same problems, so they can definitely place that trust in you. Before we leave, I just want to ask the last question. When in your company, how does it work for the students? Who can apply, and how does it benefit them?
With us, we actually started off with two programs, the Prometheus Accelerator program. So we actually, unlike a lot of other organizations, because, when I created it, I created with it with all those years of knowledge, and then we brought on recruiters, industry insiders, and then we also brought in migrants to really contribute to the content. So in the base program, essentially, we talk about there are 6 modules. Number 1 is mindset training, because as you know, you have to have the right mindset to do the things that we discussed throughout the program. And then we talk about how to network. We go from the basics to the most advanced. We talk about how to find those hidden jobs. 70% of jobs are hidden, never advertised, how to find them. And we also talk, there's a separate module just for your resume, your LinkedIn, and your cover letter. We break down every single sentence, every single paragraph, and show you exactly what needs to be done. And we have so many examples, how to get past the computer programs that actually pick up your resumes, as most big companies do these days. And we also throw in a bonus module, which sort of is an introduction to Skill Select. Before I forget, there's also a module about English speaking skills. So it can benefit people who are trying to do IELTS and PTE, but we cover speaking, writing, and in depth how to improve those skills. And that is our base program, all online. You do it on at your own pace. It's for a lifetime. You have it. It never expires. And the second program that we have is this program, plus you get coaching from one of our team members. It's going to be me or someone else, and we actually create a career plan for you and help you. We do interview prep with you. We spice up your resume to make it really stand out and grab that attention. So that's our coaching program. At the moment, we have a wait list, because we really try to make sure everyone that enrolls really finish it and put into action what they learn. So and that's why we never wanted it to be a program where you can just go in and immediately buy it or something like that. We have a wait list open now for our next enrollment, which is going to be in late August.
Awesome. Thank you, Ash, for being on my first step ever. And I feel so honored, and I really want to thank you for coming up and sharing your journey, because that is the most hardest part, because it does have our ups, but it also has our lows, and without that our story is not complete. But sharing that with a wider population brings in a lot of ifs and buts to our mind when we want to, because we are just placing ourselves out there into entire world for judgments. But I think you are going at you're just surpassing all those judgments and all those inhibitions, and you just want to help students out there. And what you kind of shared with us today, I can see myself in some of the situations for sure, and I understand that how you must have felt, and really really happy to see that what you made your life out of that particular time that you were in it. Really kudos to you. So I would like to give you a big round of applause for that.
Thanks, Ishan.
Personally, thank you so much for coming on my first step ever. And to all the people who are listening to us, if you're in Australia and if you would like to connect with Ash, I will definitely share all the important links in on my Instagram, through my LinkedIn. If you would like to just maybe say the website name for our listeners.
Yeah, it's www.prometheuseducation.com.au.
Before you leave, would you like to leave our listeners with a thought or a saying that you really resonate with?
None of us start with, that privilege of having a big network, a lot of money backing us, none of that. But it doesn't matter, because we all start from somewhere. And if you put in the work, if you put in the time and dedicate your life to achieving this goal, then you absolutely can.
That's bang on. And I think I can see that through your journey. From what I heard, like what your organization provides, the kind of course that it provides, it sounds really wholesome, because being an international student and also understanding what different topics and modules that you have, they sound so apt. And I think that is like, helping an international student to improve themselves in all the areas that is required to kind of achieve that goal. I am looking forward to seeing a lot of students who are listening to this to connecting with you, even if you just want to connect with him and just say hi, or just thank him to be here and give his time and share his journey, which is actually a huge deal, at least in my understanding. So thank you, Ash. It was lovely having you on my first step ever podcast.